today's world, there is more skepticism than there's ever been. One of the best ways that I've found in my business, Catching Made Simple, to overcome skepticism is through using testimonials. And as we film and record testimonials, there's a certain structure that I've found has been the most effective. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that structure is and exactly the questions that you can ask your clients when they have success. So use this testimonial framework. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Anj Bourgeois, and I am the founder of Catching Made Simple, where I teach catchers how to get better by practicing at home through video feedback. I've built this business up to over $100,000 a year, and here's the exact testimonial framework that I use to crush skepticism and instead instill trust. So let's jump in. In this testimonial framework, you're going to notice that there's a few things. It's in a story arc, so that means that there's going to be a before, during, and after. There's also a top and bottom, which means that there's going to be what we observe or what we see or the facts of the situation. And then there's going to be what the prospect experiences or what they feel or what they are going through. And on top of that, in the before and after phases, there's going to be really two sections. One section will be based off of where they are. The other section will be based off of their buying decision. So we do that on the front end and the back end so that we can tell the complete story of what actually made them buy and where they were versus where they are now. So let's jump into this top side of what we observe about the prospect. So one important thing to note about the observation is that it is objectively what someone is going to notice. So here are some of the words that we're going to go through, and then we'll go through these deeper in order. What were the struggles? How did they discover you? What did they implement once they started working with you? What kind of results did they get? And who else would they consider to be a good fit? These are all objective facts that someone would be able to observe about the prospect. So to put that into perspective, this is the top side of what someone would observe. Now let's move on to experience of what the prospect is actually feeling. Here are the parts of the framework that you're going to see on the bottom side. What were they feeling inside about their stress? What were their doubts about working with you? What type of impact did actually starting to do the work make on them? What type of relief would they have for the stress that they were experiencing? And now how would they coach someone else with the same doubts? So you can see these two sections where it talks about buying decisions map back and forth to each other and will ultimately work to help other people work through the same buying decisions. That's why this testimonial is so valuable. Once we move into the before stage, we're going to look at observe and experience again. So the first stage is where the customer is actually at, which is what's their struggle and what's their stress. And then how did they discover us and what were their doubts about actually working with us? So write this part down. These are the questions that you can actually ask in your interviews. For the struggle question, ask them, what was the main struggle you were having on the field? And if you're not a sports coach, you can switch out having on the field for whatever would make the most sense for you. Next kind of question you would ask is a stress question. So were you feeling any stress internally? That's going to allow them to tap into the feeling side and share the actual stress that it was causing them. This is super valuable. So once we have a concrete scenario of where someone was and what their biggest stressors were, we're going to move into the buying process. So again, we're going to look at how we would observe it and what they experience. So in the discover section, we're going to ask them, how did you discover us? And how long ago did you discover us before you started working with us? Once we get that context of the scenario, then we're going to move inside into their experience about what their biggest doubt was. This is going to be really, really important because other prospects are going to have the same doubts, and when they hear a real customer that you got great results with experiencing those same doubts on the front end and overcoming it, it's going to make a really big difference. So now we've set the stage for this before section on where someone actually is and what their buying process was like before actually working with you. Now we're getting into what it was like during the process working with you. The two words that we're going to use here are implement and impact. Implement is a great word for this observation because it gives a really clear process of the specific steps that someone did when they started working with you. And if you have a business that's the same for a lot of different people, those implementation steps are likely going to be the same for the prospects. So this is helping to lay the path for what someone else who's watching this testimonial video can expect when they start working with you. The question that you would ask here is, what did we implement when we started working together? And then let the customer say exactly what they started doing. Once we get those facts, let's move down to the feelings. We can talk about what type of impact doing that work started to make on their confidence. So I would literally ask, how did that impact your confidence? And then let them talk. They're going to talk about how amazing it was, how much they grew, but only if you do a good job. So make sure that you actually get your clients results. And that brings us through the before phase and the during phase. And now we're going to move to the after phase, where we ground it in context, and then we circle back on buying decisions, but not for them, of what they would tell someone else just like them. Let's dive in, and I want you to pay attention to how these categories tie back to what the person said earlier in the testimonial. That's going to be really important. So again, we have where the person actually is, and then we have what they would tell someone else going through a similar buying decision process. So in the results section, we want to bring back what the prospect said their biggest struggle was, and we're going to say it just like this. You said your biggest struggle was blank before we started working together. Now, what kind of results have you seen? That gets us focused on the observational facts of the situation and helps them paint a clear before-after transformation. The next question that we're going to ask is going to be on the experience side, and we're going to tie back what they said earlier their biggest stress was, and it'll sound like this as you ask the question. You mentioned your biggest stress was this. What kind of relief do you feel around that now? It's going to allow them to talk about the experience transformation that they felt inside, which is going to be really, really powerful. Now that we have the context of where they are, let's talk about buying decisions on the same two factors of observing and experiencing. So these two words are going to be consider and coach. So again, we're going to tie back what they said earlier. Previously, we talked about how they discovered us. You can mention that here, or you can just move right into this question. But here's the question that you're going to say. Now you've had great results in the program. Who else would you consider to be a good fit too? When you ask this question, it's going to allow them to explain who they think would get great results. And if they explain your ideal prospect, then that ideal prospect will have even more trust to join the program. Now we're going to call back the doubts that they had earlier. So if someone else had the same doubts that you had, then say whatever those doubts were. How would you coach them through it knowing what you know now? That question is going to allow them, a prospect who had the same doubts, coach someone else who has the same doubts through that process and ultimately get more people into your program so that you can help more people. So this is the testimonial framework that I've created, that I've used in Catching Made Simple. I think this framework makes the most sense of anything that I've seen when it comes to testimonials because it includes the before, during, after, it includes the facts and the feelings, and it includes the situational context and the buying decision process on both the front and the back end. I hope that you use this in your business so that you can actually show that you're good at what you do. Use this to generate proof and ultimately help more people. I'm Anj Bourgeois. Let's win together. And you might want to check out this video right up here.